Hello students, this is JC Benoy, your SST teacher. I hope you all are taking care of yourselves and are staying safe. Stay home, stay safe and take care of your hygiene, alright? Today we are going to look at revising longitudes, which is from the second chapter of our SST textbook. The name of a chapter was Latitudes and Longitudes. Today we are going to revise only longitudes, okay? Now after this, if there is any question related to longitudes, you should be able to answer. Okay, so pay attention completely so that you are able to understand the concepts. Now we have already studied that the extreme points of the earth are called as the North Pole and the South Pole. And what are longitudes? Longitudes are imaginary lines. Imaginary means the lines that are not really there on earth. If you go to look for it, you won't get it on earth, okay, but these are drawn for convenience, okay. So they are imaginary lines of longitude that run from the North Pole to the South Pole, okay. So how will you define longitudes? If you are asked question what are longitudes, you will say longitudes are imaginary lines that run from the North Pole to the South Pole, okay. And these longitudes are shown in this image in red color, so you can see the red color lines going from North Pole to the South Pole, okay, and these are drawn on the globes. Now what do we know more about longitudes? Now you can see in the image that there are lots of numbers there, 0, 15, 30, 45 and a small circle on top, okay. So how do we read them? We will read them as 0 degree, 15 degree longitude, 30 degree longitude, 45 degree longitude. So what is that circle read as? It is read as degree, okay. Now what is special about longitudes? One, the longitudes are not parallel, okay. What are you going to remember? Longitudes are not parallel. They are not of the same length, okay. So all these longitudes are at of different lengths. They are of the same length, okay. Longitudes are of the same length because they run from north to south. Latitudes were running horizontally and they were of different lengths. So that is the difference between latitudes and longitudes. Longitudes are of the same length. They run from north to south. Then they meet at the poles. They meet at North Pole and the South Pole. All the longitudes meet at the North Pole and the South Pole, and they are wide at the equator, okay. So narrow at the poles and wider at the equator, okay. So these are some things you need to remember about longitudes. One, they are not parallel. They are of the same length. They meet at the poles. They are wide at the equator and meet at the poles. So these are special characteristics of the longitudes. What else do we know about longitudes? So basically longitudes are used to measure time, okay, to indicate time, okay. So that is why longitudes are also known as indicators of time, okay. What are longitudes also known as? Longitudes are also known as indicators of time. What does that mean? It means that they help us to calculate time, okay. So they are indicators or they show the time, okay. Then also because they show us the time, they are known as meridians, okay. Longitudes are indicators of time. Because they show time, they are also called as meridians, okay. So what are longitudes also known as? Longitudes are also known as meridians. Why are they called meridians? Because they show time. They help us to check time, okay. Now at the of the longitudes, there is a 0 degree longitude which I have marked with the blue arrow, okay. The 0 degree longitude is known as the prime meridian. What is it called as? The prime meridian, okay. So 0 degree longitude is known as the prime meridian, okay. Which is the prime meridian? Prime meridian is the 0 degree longitude, okay. We will learn more about that in this slide. So now the big arrow that is shown on the screen is indicating 0 degree longitude, okay. So it runs from the North Pole to the South Pole. Now what is so special about the prime meridian? It is the 0-degree longitude, and it passes through a place called the Royal Observatory, which is at Greenwich near South London. Prime Meridian runs through the Royal Observatory, which is at Greenwich near South London. You have to remember this. Okay. Now the prime meridian does one very important work. What is that work? All the longitudes that are to the eastern side of the prime meridian and are indicated with E. Okay, E stands for east, so it is marked with degree E. E is for east. And all the longitudes which are to the west of the 0-degree longitude are marked with W, degree W. Okay, and what does W stand for? West. Look at this image. Okay, now you can see the red line which is running across the globe. Okay, and that is the 0-degree longitude. Now what did I tell you the 0-degree longitude is known as? It is known as the prime meridian. Now one very important work that the prime meridian does is that it divides the earth into two hemispheres. We have already learned that the latitude equator divides the earth into two equal halves, and those are known as the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Now what is the longitude doing? Longitude is also dividing the earth into two halves. Okay, what are those halves called as? Into two parts. So the longitude divides the earth into two parts, that is the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. What is it? The eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. Now which longitude does this division? It is the prime meridian. So prime meridian divides the earth into the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. Now each hemisphere, that is in eastern hemisphere and in western hemisphere, you will find in each hemisphere there are 180 longitudes. How many longitudes in eastern hemisphere? 180. How many longitudes in the western hemisphere? 180. So in all on earth, how many longitudes do we have? 360 longitudes. In all total, how many longitudes do we have on earth? 360 longitudes. Let's just revise quickly. Okay, prime meridian divides the earth into eastern hemisphere and western hemisphere. There are in each hemisphere 180 longitudes. How many how many longitudes are there in eastern hemisphere? 180. Correct. How many longitudes are there in the western hemisphere? 180. So in all across the globe, how many longitudes do we have? 360. The total comes to 360. Okay, so this you have to remember. Okay, now I told you that the longitude, 0 meridian longitude, divides the earth into eastern and western hemisphere. All the longitudes that are towards 180 longitudes that are in the eastern hemisphere will be marked with degree east, and all the longitudes in the western hemisphere will be marked, there are 180 longitudes there, so those will be marked with degree west. Okay, so this, I hope this picture makes it more clear. Now one more important longitude that we need to remember about is the international date line. Okay, what is it? The international date line. Now international date line passes through 180 degree longitude. Where does it pass through? It passes through 180 degree longitude, and it shows the difference between, it will show the difference of date between the eastern and the western hemisphere. Okay, just remember this much for today. We will see how it helps us to calculate date and time. Okay, so international date line is at 180 degree longitude, and it marks the difference between the difference of date. Okay, the date is different in the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. We will learn more about that in the next video. Okay, so for now you just need to remember international date line passes through 180 degree longitude, which I have shown in this image with the help of the yellow color lines. Okay, and the date is different in the eastern hemisphere and the western hemisphere. So that date, the change in date, is marked by the international date line. Okay, So now I'm going to stop here. You need to learn and revise these points by, you should be able to pit pat it, okay? It should be completely thorough. So any question from these points you should be able to answer very clearly. Take care of yourselves. Have a nice day.